Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the third and final update of my Dexterity Stacker Siege Ballista build. So I'm on my stream on twitch.tv/Palsteron. We've been farming up quite a storm, as I always used to say, and we've been buying 100 sets of Feared, and we're kind of farming them right now. We're like 1/4 in or something, and yeah, that's basically what this build was designed to do. And the thing about Feared is that you can now do 2 of the bosses Uber version. As you can see in the background, this is one of them, which is Uber Cortex, and you can also do Uber Elder, which on the Inquisitor is actually not a lot nicer to do because you have that regen. There's some builds that there's some bosses where you're just going to get hit like Uber Elder. So yeah, it's really nice to be Inquisitor there. But overall, I want to talk about some of the changes I've made since last time. Some of the things we found out. One of the things we found out real quick is that this build has way too much damage. Basically meaning that currently we're sitting on like 1.3 billion damage. But the problem is you can't even realize it because there's a lot of debuffs where you have to connect with your enemy to even get that debuff on, and you just can't because everything's immediately dead, as you can see in the background. I can hardly get my sniper's mark on enemies. So yeah, that's a little bit of a thing, but I guess that's just because we invested way too much currency into it. It is, after all, my last build of the league, so we went a little bit crazy. And the fears that we're running are also quite insane. As you can see in the background down here, we're basically evaporating everything that comes onto the screen immediately. And these are fully juiced fears. These are literally the hardest fears that you can get. They're like almost 300 quantity. Some of them are even more. We just juiced them up with the Atlas passive tree as much as you can get, but as you can see here, we're actually dropping over 2 full Maven writs. So yeah, this is what the build was designed for, but let's get into a little bit more of the intricacies of the build. And here we are, level 99 Inquisitor. As you can see here, this is the kind of gear that we crafted. We already talked about this in the second video. I want to go over some stuff that we added, for example, flasks. Also, we have a weapon swap right here. We have barrage support, which is against bosses. And whenever we have to clear stuff, for example, before Cortex or before Uber Azeri, slotting it out is very nice because then you actually get all of your additional arrows as clear. What changed since last time we talked? Well, number one, we now have 3,242 dexterity, and that's basically because we divined most of our gear. We also got the chest enchant that gives us even more dexterity. Yeah, we basically divined everything we could, and now we're at this point. I don't think we're going to go higher than 22 ballistas. I think it's already overkill. It was mostly about getting over 3k for that juicy YouTube thumbnail, obviously. And yeah, I think 22 totems is totally fine. Probably way too much overkill anyways, but why not? Sometimes you just gotta have fun, right? So one thing that changed that I want to talk about is that there is now a way to actually determine which are the best timeless jewels for your build. There's a member of the community who kind of like found out the, I don't know, algorithm or however you want to call it behind all of this stuff, and now you can actually check what jewels do. And there is also a tool for that, which I downloaded. And the first thing I wanted to know is what is the best jewel for my version of the build. And would you believe it? I looked for as much dexterity as possible for exactly these notables. And guess what? The random jewel that I divined into is actually the best possible jewel for this kind of build, which is crazy, right? Obviously, there is a lot of other seeds that have like 15 dexterity or 15 dexterity and plus 20 dex, but the 20% increased dex in total plus the 20 plus 20 dex down here, only this one has. So I guess that's pretty crazy. Number two, what we did, we already talked about this last time around when people talked to me about all placement speed on Inquisitor. You're going to lose so much. We basically made up for that. We went for a lot of harvest, and we basically enchanted all our jewels with 6% totem placement speed, and we have a lot of them. So you have one jewel here, number one. I think these are both corrupted, so we can't use these. Number two, also 6%, so that's 2. This one is corrupted, so you can't. This one has 6% placement speed, that's free. Another cluster, that's 4. My Watcher's Eye, that's 5. All right, going on. No, that was my Emperor's Mastery, sorry. My Watcher's Eye here, number 6. The cluster jewel, number 7. No, actually, this one we did not hit. Okay, we're still at 6. And then these ones are corrupted. So in total, that means just from those, we get 6 times 6%, that is 36% totem placement speed. Now, if you're thinking, wow, this had to have been annoying to farm all of these harvest implicits, it's actually not. In total, I checked on stream, it took us a total of 3.5 hours to farm these jewels, And the way you can do this is basically with sextants. So there is obviously the Sacred Grove sextants that you can use. It's a little bit cheaper than going on the map device, but whatever you want to. The big star here is this sextant right here. So this sextant is completely crazy when you're looking for certain things. A lot of people are farming for the blue ones, for the reforges. But what we're going to do here is we're going to hunt for the jewel implicits, and then you need the yellow crops. Now, basically what this does is it's more likely to give you less common crafting options, which jewels also falls into. But what it does is every harvest in your map contains at least one crop of yellow plants, which is huge. Basically, that means each one of those, like 2 fields of harvest crops, one of them is going to be yellow at least. Some of them are even double yellow. So that paired with just going for harvest, brute forcing harvest, and then having these nodes here, which give you an additional chance for another crafting option. In this case, we have this one right here. Up here, you go for Heart of the Grove, you get these points here, and you also get the additional harvest. If you do that for like 3 to 4 hours, you're going to get, depending on your RNG, around about 4 to 6 of those totem placement speed implicits. Obviously, it is very RNG. The chance to get it, there's 26 different harvest implicits. They're all equally weighted. So yeah, and what we also included, which is a change that we've made, is Unnatural Instinct. Now, at the first, I didn't really want to do this, but it kind of made sense after min-maxing the build a little bit further. We needed a lot of resistances because obviously in a attribute stacker build, you're sacrificing a lot of your resistance slots for dexterity, right? And in this case, also crit multi. So what we ended up doing in the end is just do Unnatural Instinct. This basically gives us all of these resistances, right? A little bit of increased damage, which doesn't really matter, but it also gives us these small nodes here, which is 5% attack speed, a little totem duration, a little totem placement speed, and also the movement speed. Even if you're a bosser, I just think movement speed is still really, really nice to have. Another thing we also did is we replaced the brittle ground on boots with interrogation. Now that overall hit our damage quite a bit, which didn't really matter, but we could have gotten to 23 totems or ballistas if you wanted to, but we chose to go this way and get our brittle from here for the extra crit, because brittle ground boots were just too annoying, right? You have to walk over enemies, so you actually get the crit bonus, and the crit bonus is a big deal on this build. Without it, you only have like 50% crit, and then you don't get the ignore monster elemental resistances. So yeah, you really need brittle, and this was just the best way, and this where we're basically crit capped and 100% crit all the time. As for flasks, what we settled with was basically this setup here, with a Quicksilver flask just to be a little bit faster. If you don't need this, if you're having some kind of static boss fights, then obviously you can replace this with something else. I didn't really know anything. Adziri's Promise is probably the weakest of the flasks. I like having a little bit of chaos resistance, especially when you run Feared, because one of the biggest things about this build is actually that you don't have armor or evasion. So stuff like these pesky projectile chaos vomiters in Uber Adziri can actually hit you quite a bit. So getting that extra chaos res is really nice. We get our onslaught from a silver flask. We get attack speed on top. We obviously have the Dying Sun for the extra damage while having the barrage, and basically just a no-brainer bottled faith to cap our crit. Now, as for what content you want to run with this build, I have a few things to talk about. Number one, we dropped this one randomly in the Cortex, which is pretty damn lucky. Now, basically, we're running Feared. So I bought up all these Feared sets. There was 100 in here. We're currently like, I think 23 in, or 24. And basically, that's what the build is designed to do. Let's talk about it briefly. Chayula is a joke, obviously. It doesn't matter how high you go in tiers with Chayula, because you always one-shot her. She just doesn't have enough HP. Same with Cortex. We had some absolute crazy mods that just don't matter. Even if they have like crazy amounts of HP that they have like reduced crit, they have like extra energy shield, it doesn't really matter. You won't get hit. There is no chance for them to get hit unless you stand directly in front of them. Uber Adziri, same thing. It just doesn't have the HP to actually withstand anything. So these frees are just kind of complete no-brainers. You can definitely do Uber Cortex, don't do the normal one. And as for Uber Elder, that's a little bit of an interesting one. You can die from time to time because of bullet hell. Now, we do have regen, so you can actually tank like 2 to 3 balls before you die. But obviously it can happen that Elder does his whole spiel with restricting where you can go, right? And at that point, you might just be toast. But overall, usually we die like one time in Uber Elder and in Uber Elder. So that's a fight that I guess if you have way less investment and you do like, I don't know, 1/10 of my damage, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder. But usually it didn't feel like you needed anywhere near the damage we have. We basically faced them immediately. The annoying thing about bosses in PoE, as always, is that even if you face them immediately, they're still doing the last attack that they wanted to do. And if Shaper's attack was bullet hell, it's still going to do the bullet hell until it, and then it's going to come back and instantly phase and be dead. But what are my overall thoughts on the build? Well, I'll talk about this more in my full build guide that's going to come out. It's going to be like, as always, like a 30 to 40 minute video where I go in depth about everything. But TLDW, the build just does way too much damage. And that's not just because I've obviously pumped a lot of currency into it. That is normal for attribute stackers. But I mean, the amount of damage you get with the Inquisitor version is just absolutely ridiculous. Used to be that before Forbidden Bloods existed, Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh existed, you would have to go Hierophant, which is kind of lame because other than that one node here, Ritual of Awakening, all the other nodes are just dog shit. And now you get to have a full crazy ascendancy like Inquisitor that has insanely strong damage multiplier, crit, stuff like that. Ignore resistances while still being able to get Ritual Awakening. I mean, this build just doesn't feel right. It just it just feels way too crazy. And there's also content creators I want to shout out that have more budgety versions. Like, for example, Aero and also Bazooka Tank. They have made other versions of this build. Both of them are Hierophant. They focus a little bit more on realistic scenarios. Overall, I can just speak for this version here, and it has been an absolute blast. It still is. I don't know, it's just deleting bosses. If I want a boss killer, this is what I want. So yeah, I'll leave the most updated POB down in the description. This is basically the character that I currently have. And as for everything else, I will explain it all in my full build guide, detailed. I hope you liked the way I kind of did it this time around, where I kind of went through where I start when I make a build up to like here. It's only been like 3 videos. It's kind of been short. Maybe I'll make it long in the future because I haven't really had much time to make update videos. But yeah, other than that, hope you liked the video. Hope you are looking out for the full build guide, and see you around. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do videos like this without you. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, honestly, Fjords are a lot more fun than I thought. There's a lot of very goofy gear I found out. Like, for example, we found this Garb of the Femoral that is basically made for Animate Guardians, and it has an Animate Guardian implicit, which is worth a few exalts, but it's usually just worthless, which is cool. I'm learning a lot about the game, TLDR. I did not know a lot of these implicits. Obviously, you know implicits like that, but there's a lot more interesting stuff going on here. Overall, Fjords, I don't know if it's that much money. We're going to talk about that in the different section. Overall, it's just been a lot of fun. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.